This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Reporter Show, made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and coming at us today is our boy Andrew's going to give us this week's topics.
Who is new Pistons signee Justin Patton? And talking to the Pistons, is it possible that we could actually see them in action this summer? If Tom Gores has his way, that would be the answer would be in the affirmative. But aside from the Pistons, we might actually shift to the ice today and talk about a local team that got, and let me make sure I phrase this properly, shafted in the Nhl Draft Lottery. It's the Fan Report.
That's a good way to put it. Shafted. I would tend to agree with that, as would most Detroit sports fans, especially Wings fans.
Wings fans.
Before we get into that, let's go ahead and start with Justin Patton. That sound good to you?
Sure. Let's start with
All right, so go ahead and take it away here. Who is Justin Patton, Andrew?
So, Nick, I don't know if you remember, but when we did our live show, Justin Patton was drafted in 2017, so he's still a relatively young player, and this was one of the, if not the first draft that we covered on our live show. And Justin Patton, he went number 17 overall, and he was the guy that I remember us.
I thought he went 16.
17. He went 17, and this was a guy that I remember us comparing to like a broke man's version of Karl Anthony Towns, and that was like our way of kind of hyping him up. He clearly hasn't lived up to that potential yet, obviously. He has really done nothing in the league so far. But in terms of actual skill set, he is that same type of two-way big that I would say Christian Wood is, except Patton's skill set is nowhere near as refined yet. He's still very raw. The interesting part about this signing is, well, one, if we're ever going to actually see him in a uniform outside of preseason. But the real interesting thing is, with the fact that this is kind of like a redundant player with something we already have in our roster, what spots are they exactly trying to fill here by bringing in Justin Patton?
This may be one of two things. It may be considering this is going to be more of like a training camp restart for the Pistons, considering they're not going to be playing live basketball games. It could be potentially a training partner for the bigs that we already have in the system. Now, I hope the Pistons re-sign Christian Wood. We don't know if they're going to, but that is what I would argue is expected of them at this point, is to re-sign Christian Wood in the offseason. If not, maybe Justin Patton comes in and fills a similar role to that, or just comes in and kind of fills in the blank space left by Christian Wood.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like this could just be a training camp fodder type player that comes in, fills a body, and works out with the team.
That's what I feel like.
If it turns out that he ends up standing out, maybe he becomes a rotational player in the system, or maybe they send him to the G League. But for all intents and purposes, from what I believe this is about, is a training camp situation where Justin Patton is obviously looking for a chance to prove himself, because he hasn't been successful in the NBA thus far. Just to fact check, by the way, he was number 16. Yeah. I looked it up. You said 17.
No, it's 16.
You said 17.
I swear I said 16.
Nope. But how he would fit in the system, I really don't know. I personally have not watched Justin Patton a ton. I don't know how many opportunities you would have had to watch Justin Patton play.
Not many, considering
exactly.
He's played in exactly 9 NBA games in his career.
Right. So you really have no idea what he's capable of doing.
Yeah.
I really
have a rough idea of his skill set from his days in Creighton. That's it.
Right. I would have to go back and look at my pre-draft notes from 2017, which, hint, hint, I don't have them anymore. To get you a full, breakdown of what type of player he was. I just don't remember him well enough to say, oh, he's going to play this role, that role in training camp or whatever. But frankly, when it all comes down to it, I really just think he's a training camp fodder type player, much like we see in the NFL and training camp and preseason games, a guy that's stepping in to play a role of getting the your rostered players into shape, keeping them in shape and getting them back and trying different things out with your actual active rostered players and helping them grow. I don't see Justin Patton as part of our future. If I'm wrong, wonderful.
Yeah.
That'd be great. If he is a big part of our future, that'd be awesome. He's young. He obviously had talent at Creighton to be a first-round pick. So who knows? Maybe it's a flyer. Maybe it's more of a training camp situation. So we'll find out. But again, I don't really have a ton of hopes that he's going to be a rotational type player or even a focal point of the future of this organization.
I could tell you, because I've been doing a little bit of research on him just to kind of refresh my memory on him, because I too do not remember much from outside of that one note that we had on him in terms of broke man's Karl Anthony Towns. But I can tell you that at least at Creighton, he was an explosive above the rim player on the offensive end, and he was a very mobile defender on the defensive end who could step out to the perimeter. And even offensively, he showed hints of an outside shot at Creighton. He only attempted, he was 14 attempts in his freshman year, which was the only year he played at Creighton, but he made 53% of those 14 attempts. So again, he has a lot of potential. His shot, I was watching video, his shot is wonky as hell. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thing he's going to have to fix if he does hope to get real minutes in the NBA. But yeah, I agree with you that in all likelihood, this is no more than training camp fodder.
Fun fact about Justin Patton, he's only played 9 games in his NBA career, yet he's played them for 3 different teams.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He obviously was drafted by Minnesota, where he only played 1 game in, I believe, almost 3 years there. Or no, only 1 year there. They declined his option, but then he was traded to Philly in the Jimmy Butler trade, where he played 3 games for Philly. And then he played 5 games for OKC when he was traded to them before he was waived. I mean, none of his games, he really had enough time to really prove himself. I mean, his highest minutes played average was 7 with Philly. So, I mean, you can really say that he didn't really get a chance to prove himself, but that just means that he wasn't earning it in practices.
Exactly.
So we'll find out what exactly he's going to be for this organization. Again, I don't expect him to be anything more than an offseason cut. Mm-hmm. I believe that's what his contract is anyways, is to the end of the season, isn't it?
I think so. I think it was a 1-year deal.
Okay, yeah. So it's to the end of the year. So he'll probably end up walking in the offseason. He's just coming in to be a training camp guy for the time being. While the Pistons are looking to get back in shape going into the actual offseason, probably a shortened offseason is my guess. Well, technically not for them. I mean, offseason's already here, but the actual offseason to where we get restarted back into next season. So I don't know exactly what he's going to do, but I don't have high expectations.
All right. So let's move on from Patton and let's look at bigger picture with the Pistons. News broke a few days ago that there are many teams of the bottom 8 teams that aren't going to participate in the NBA restart continuation. Apparently, a lot of team owners from these 8 teams are motioning to have their own season to finish out at a separate location on a separate campus and get their own televised games. Now, Tom Gores, Pistons owner, has been one of the most vocal about this potential restart. I was reading this article like, all right, I'd be really interested. It'd be fun to see the Pistons play again. But what does this really offer? Like, what real traction can this gain for the league itself to say, you know what, this is something we should really explore because it's going to be more than just a game played for shits and giggles?
I'll tell you right now, the NBA probably won't entertain this all that much because in all reality, a game between the Detroit Pistons and the Atlanta Hawks is not going to gain that much TV publicity. I'm sorry. Exactly. I mean, the Hawks may be a bad example because they've got a bunch of young talent. But, okay, the Pistons and the Bulls, there's a good example. That's not going to gain that much TV publicity because, one, both those teams are terrible. Mm-hmm. And people are going to want to watch the games between the Sixers and the Celtics. People aren't going to want to watch the Pistons and the Bulls play. It just is what it is. Neither one of them are good basketball teams. Mm-hmm. Now, this could be a play where this changes up draft lottery if this has an implication on the remaining schedule of the season and changes up the draft lottery for positions.
That's the obvious route you take, but like, how do you do it?
You take the total games of the year. Mm-hmm. You go and you have them play each other, and then you take the total games of the year. I mean, it is what it is.
So it's just going to be a tanking tournament.
Essentially, yes. No, but you really can't do it that way because of that aspect. Maybe you play it in a way where the number one, you flip-flop it where the team with the best record ends up getting the top spot, then go down from there so it's more competitive.
What you could say is, so like that way you're not rewarding the best team in the tournament. You could say like, all right, what we'll do, like, for example, the Warriors, who had the worst record in the league. So basically the amount of wins you get in this tournament, basically your record in the tournament gets subtracted from your current NBA standings. So like, let's say, what was the Pistons record at the end of the year? It was like 21 and something.
Not good.
Hold on. Let me pull up the NBA standings so I can give you a real life example here. So assuming this is like an 8-game tournament or whatever, Pistons are 20 and 46. Let's say the Pistons went 5-3. That would lower. This is just me spitballing, but that would lower the record to 15 and 43. So it basically gets subtracted from their record. So it like winning games does try to make the move up. At the same time, it's not rewarding a team like one of the higher ranked teams like the Bulls, for example, who are only a couple games for the Pistons anyways, but it doesn't reward the top team in the tournament for winning the tournament and say like, oh, you were the best team in the tournament. Here's your lottery. Here's your number one overall pick.
I guess I can see that argument. I really don't think it needs to be that convoluted. I still think that playing a tournament where the winner gets the number one overall or the number one lottery spot makes sense, just because all these teams that are in this situation are all really bad. You can put in a caveat that players who were ineligible to play by the end of, we'll call it March. All right, by the end of March are not eligible to play in this tournament. They can only practice with the team. So guys like Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, those guys are not eligible to play. Just so it doesn't mean that the Warriors just take the number one overall lottery spot immediately. Yeah. Granted, they already have it, but they'd have to earn it in this tournament as well. I mean, you could make the argument that your way works better, which I actually don't hate that idea at all.
You bring up a good argument because the best team in this tournament, the best team left out of the playoffs right now is the Hornets, who only are 3.5 games better than the Pistons. So
right, every team here is terrible.
Yeah.
So you're playing bad basketball no matter what. So it really either could be the route you suggested, where you just subtract from your season total, or you just play a tournament where best team gets, you go from number 1 to number 8, and that's how you determine your lottery position. But either way, I don't really know if this is worth it for the NBA and for these teams to really pursue. You also got to add in the risk of injury for some of these guys. You also got to add in the fact that
any of teams like the Knicks, for example, who Bleacher Report I read mentioned, was the fact that the Knicks were one of the teams that were against this. And it's because they have a lot of free agents on the roster that would obviously not opt into playing. So they'd be playing on a heavily depleted roster. Right.
The other thing is, we have to look at the elephant in the room here, which is the COVID situation that is continuing to move forward. It's not going away. Yeah. We've seen the likes of Florida and Georgia and Arizona I could be wrong on Georgia, but Florida and Arizona in particular just get pounded recently. And Florida is one of those locations where the NBA is putting things to play. They're using Disney World as a location for these players to, quote unquote, call it a bubble and live inside it. And a lot of players are against this bubble, and a lot of players are kind of nervous about the Florida situation, and for good reason. Florida has gotten absolutely pounded by, I won't call it a second wave because we're not quite there yet, but a continuation and an uptick on the first wave.
Do you think the whole situation in Florida, where they're now above what, like 5,000 cases a day or something like that?
It ain't good.
But the situation there, with the fact that I think they announced 2 days ago that 16 NBA players got diagnosed with COVID and like the random round of testing that they did. Yep. Do you think any of this is putting the NBA restart in jeopardy at all?
I don't know. We've seen a few players. Let's take golf, for example. We've seen a few players and caddies and staff members test positive there, and they're continuing to roar on with that. Yeah. I think the NBA is at a point where they're losing so much money by not playing at this point that they really just want to get back to playing. And I think they're so deep.
It's 100% a money play.
I think they're so deep into the logistics aspect of getting the season restarted. It's almost at a point of no return, where we will see the only way.
They release the schedule.
Right. Where in my opinion, the only way we will not see the NBA come back at this point, because again, I think we're at a point of no return, is if several players say we will not play. Yeah. And I mean several players, and big names too. It's going to require the big names to not play.
Yeah, right now it's just a few players, and for the most part, not groundbreaking names.
The biggest name I could think of is Avery Bradley, and frankly, whatever. Yeah. But if guys like a LeBron or a Giannis Antetokounmpo were to say, no, I don't feel comfortable playing, I'm not playing, that'll wake people up. That'll get the league's notice and change things.
Because a lot of people are rallying behind LeBron right now. So imagine LeBron pivoted and said, I'm not playing.
Oh, I know. Obviously, he is a big proponent of playing. So he wants to play. The dude practically lives in a bubble during the NBA season as it is. So this is no different for him. But either way, it is something to be concerned about, considering we are seeing several players get diagnosed with COVID, and we will likely see more as time goes by. Yeah. Now, mind you, this is kind of like a weird in-between period before they go into the bubble, but their states are probably open, so they've been able to go out and do things, and that's probably where they've contracted the virus. Well, isolation time, get them away from that, get past it. Once they go into the bubble, in theory, they're safe. In theory. Now, that doesn't mean that so-and-so player A doesn't sneak off campus and go to a bar and catch it there and bring it back.
And that's one thing that I've been thinking about is what happens to the restart if, like, let's say 3 games in, they do a random round of testing and 10 players get diagnosed with COVID. Like, you can't, like, do you just sit them out and just, like, ban them from the bubble? Like,
I will say
happens?
I don't think 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4 players catching it's going to stop anything, just like it hasn't in the PGA. I would be more concerned. I mean, what's the number?
Well, there's more direct contact in the NBA than there is in the PGA.
There is. But again, though, what is the number that is going to cause the NBA to say, all right, hang on, we got to put a pause on this? What's that number going to be? And you can argue that it is something as small as 5
LeBron,
or 6 or 7. Right. You can argue it's something as small as 5 because of the direct contact in the NBA. Granted, hopefully they're doing enough rounds of testing where if someone does test positive, they catch it early enough to where there's not enough exposure for other players in there, and they're able to quarantine them. And I hope they have a quarantine zone in the bubble. I would imagine they do.
Yeah.
But what is that number? What is that? I don't want to call it a magic number, but what is that number going to be for the NBA? And they are going to have to set one because if they just continue to ignore it and we see cases rise from 10 to 15 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, and they continue to ignore it, well, 1, we're going to have a problem of player personnel. We're not going to have enough players. 2, it's dangerous. Because there are not, the bubble is a positive thing. It does keep players away from society, but it can also be a negative thing because these players are going to be close to each other, going to be around each other. And I know they have rules and things set up in place where I think I saw something where they're going to give them like this alarm system thing where if they're standing around someone for longer than 5 seconds that's not in their immediate family or in their immediate team, that it like starts beeping or something like that. I don't know. It was totally ridiculous. I know. It was totally ridiculous. I don't know if it's actually going to happen. But I know there's going to be precautions set into place. But just look at everyday society. It is so difficult to follow every single rule we have been given. And that's not including playing a semi-contact sport of basketball. You're constantly in contact with someone on the basketball court. It is what it is. It's part of the game. So that means that you're probably going to be exchanging germs and viral infections and things like that between each other. And that's something that there is to be concerned about. And that is the negative aspect of this bubble is they're going to be forced to be close to each other. So if things do start, things can spread very quickly and very rampantly.
Yeah.
So the NBA is going to have a number that says, all right, we need to pause and stop this.
I agree 100%. But yeah, what that number is, I don't know if they're going to base them because we don't even know how many players are actually going to be returning to play. So I don't know if it's going to be based on like percentage of players that are being held out or quality of players that are being held out. The number changes based on that. I don't know. But I think you're right that the NBA has to set a firm number where it can't be arbitrary, like mid-season.
Right.
Where like you can look and you can see and you can say, all right, we're getting dangerously close to hitting a number where we're going to have to put things on pause. But then like, and the NBA steps in saying like, oh, arbitrarily, like, no, I think we can handle like 20 more cases instead of 5. But no, I agree 100%. I think a firm number would go a long way towards at least easing player concerns, knowing that the NBA is maintaining some control over the situation and not just going to let things run rampant, as well as any fans who are concerned about the return too. So I do think you bring up a fantastic point.
I mean, I'm not saying I want the NBA to publicly release what this number is. And frankly, I don't even need it to be like exactly 50 cases or 40 cases. It can be somewhere between 20 to 25 cases at depending on the time of season. Like if we hit 20 total cases in the first month or first week, all right, we got to stop things. Things aren't going well. But if we finally hit 20 cases by like the second to last week of the year, maybe it's not so bad. And now I'm not saying 20 cases ongoing right now. That's 20 total cases throughout the course.
Yeah.
So that means that the first 5 or so cases, depending on when they got them, are probably healed and back playing. So it has to be a number that's, all right, we have a certain amount of active cases ongoing at this point in the season. All right, this is too much. We need to stop. It's not safe. So.
No, yeah, I like. Let me just go back. I wasn't saying for to publicly release a number. Basically, I was just saying I think it would go a long way for the NBA to come out and say there is a point where we will admit that it's not safe. Going like we're not just going to go blatantly and ignore anything that happens. Like
so that we have like 3 players playing 3-on-3 at the end of the year.
Yeah, we do have a safety measure in place where we would call things off if things got to a point.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. All right, so we switch over to the ice.
Yeah, we can do that. We mentioned a little bit about the NBA.
Well, actually, I didn't even ask you the big question. Would you, going back to our original topic, would you actually want to see a Pistons return? Would you want to see the bottom 8 teams return to play?
This part.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd like to see the Pistons return. I miss my Pistons basketball, but at the same time, I don't know that the format that they're suggesting is worth it to not only fans or the league, but also the players too. By bringing more people into your circle and playing around them, the more risk you pose upon yourself. When does it become
so far, all we're
worth
hearing
it
is
to
just
you?
a standard schedule. That's all we're hearing so far.
When does it become worth it to you to continue things on? Now, if they were to put implications in terms of draft lottery format or positioning, that's a little different. That may be worth it to you and your organization. But either way, I don't think anything's going to happen unless you get every team on board. So in the situation like the Knicks, because of that, I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think they would just cut one team out and play with 7. That'd be kind of weird.
Yeah.
But either way, I'd like to see it. I just don't think that there's a format that makes sense for them to come back with the continuing ongoing situation in the world in this country. I do agree that I do think those 8 teams should have a separate training facility from the rest of the NBA. I don't hate that idea. Again, the fewer people inside that bubble, the better, in my opinion. So the fewer distraction, fewer chance for COVID spread. So, move them to their own facilities elsewhere, create their own mini bubble, we'll call it, and go from there.
I do think that even if this doesn't happen, which I feel like in all likelihood is not going to happen, the NBA should start working towards putting some kind of measures in place where teams can practice together, because an 8-month layoff for those 8 teams is
they've already reopened the practice facilities.
Have they?
Yeah, I thought they opened back up in
completely.
May. I thought they opened up in May.
I missed that completely if that happened.
Now they've obviously got rules in place where only a certain amount of people can be at the training facilities. Majority of NBA teams have reopened facilities for individual workouts. Pistons players can begin having voluntary individual workouts at the Performance Center on Thursday, June 4th. So earlier this month, they did reopen the facilities for individual workouts. I don't know if they've opened things for full workouts.
So it is player initiative in terms of working out, though. So players need to make sure they are staying in shape.
Yes.
Yeah.
As they already should be. Let's be honest. We should all be, frankly, making sure we're staying in shape.
Exactly.
And I have not. But either way, the practice facilities are open. I do think that they should be able to practice as a team if they're, obviously player initiated, if they're willing and comfortable to, but being able to practice as a team in their facilities, that is fine with me. If they choose not to do this, obviously.
Want to kick off the Red Wings?
Yeah, we can go ahead and kick off the Red Wings. So obviously, guys, Red Wings, the NHL had the draft lottery the other night. The Red Wings were the number 1 odds. Sort of. The Senators, technically speaking, had better odds than the Red Wings did. They had, I think it was like 24.5 or something percent, where the Wings had 18.5% chance to get the number 1 pick. And that's because the Senators, in a trade with the San Jose Sharks, had the 2nd and 3rd best odds. So, with that being said, draft lottery came. Wings end up with, no surprise here, the number 4th overall pick. Safe to say they got shafted. There was, leading into the draft lottery, there was a lot of speculation and talk of how they were going to restructure things based on how the restart of the NHL season was going to happen and the formats in thereof. There was a lot of, if you are, one of the bottom 3 teams, you can't get worse. If you're the worst team, you can't get worse than the 2nd pick. Second worst team can't get worse than the 3rd pick, and so on and so forth, which made quite a bit of sense in my eyes. And frankly, I think that's how all draft lottery should be. If you're the worst team in the league, you really shouldn't get any worse than the 2nd overall pick. But then again, is it a true lottery at that point? Probably not. But either way, we've seen this in the past where the Wings have gotten shafted in the draft lottery. I believe it was a couple years ago we fell all the way to 6 when we shouldn't have. And Steve Yzerman came out and said that he's not even a bit surprised, which kind of goes to show. But the real issue that I had with the draft lottery was the fact that one of the teams in the playoff restart or the NHL restart with the play-in games is going to get the number 1 overall pick. And that's where I have an issue where why are they being rewarded here with the number 1 overall pick when it could be a team that actually is already pretty damn good? I mean, I think I saw something that the Penguins have a shot to get that number 1 overall pick, or the Canadiens have a shot to get that number 1 overall pick. Those teams are playoff teams, to say the least. They're teams that are already fighting for a cup. Maybe not the Canadiens so much as the Pens, but they're already fighting to go after the Stanley Cup as it is, and adding a number 1 overall pick, especially in a year where you have a generational type talent in Alexis Lafreniere. And obviously, a guy like that can take an organization like the Red Wings and jumpstart a rebuild and put them in a position where they're looking at the playoffs potentially, not necessarily next year, but the following. And they're looking at being one of the top tier franchise because they do already have a core in place. It's a young core. It's not the greatest, but it is a good young core that looks to be something of the future. And adding a guy like Lafreniere to that, or even Quentin Byfield or Stützle to that, who are the next top 2 prospects, is something that would obviously be a big uptick in this rebuild, be a big jumpstart for this rebuild. And it would make things a lot easier for Stevie Y in doing so. So for the Wings to not even have a chance most likely not have a chance at any of those 3 players. Obviously, we've seen crazy things happen. We never expected Philip Zadina to drop as far as he did to us, but he did. So technically speaking, could Byfield or Stützle drop to us? Yes. Lafreniere is going number 1 overall no matter what. But I don't see it happening. I see both those guys I see those 3 players as top 3. So you end up with one of the next group of guys, which is, there's any number of players that you can look at there at the number 4 spot. Now, I'm not saying that the NHL draft lottery is rigged. I
was about to literally bring that up. I
have said in the past that I do think the NBA draft lottery is rigged at times. Not every year, but at times.
Cleveland getting it like 3 times in a row.
Yeah, or the Knicks to get Patrick Ewing. Yeah. I've also seen the Rangers name thrown as a team that could potentially get this number 1 overall pick, but I do think it's at least a little bit fishy that the NHL is having a second round draft lottery for the teams that are in the play-in games. Yeah. That
it's like 2 perfectly innately tied to the restart.
They're televising the second round of draft lottery situations to determine where the other teams in the play-in games are going to fall.
Can I ask you one?
So now this makes that real entertaining to watch because now we get to see who's going to be the number 1 overall pick of those teams. So it does kind of seem a little fishy for TV rating purposes that they kept that number 1 pick open for the drama of having, a team still potentially get that pick.
And that was, they announced that second phase on Friday, right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Which was it Thursday or Friday when the draft lottery was?
That was draft lottery day.
So how did they already come to that decision that quickly?
Because they already had that decision. I mean, in all reality, you already have these TV time slots blocked out well ahead of time.
Exactly. So I'm saying, did they? So, because I've always gone under the guise that unless I suspected that the process was rigged, that in a true lottery, the league does not know who's being ahead of time, who the teams are that are going to certain spots.
Now, mind you, there isn't in the NHL. They don't. It's not like there's ping pong balls coming out and it's in front. There's just envelopes that are handed to the commissioner who announces the pick. So the lottery is technically picked before airing. So I mean, there's something a little fishy there. I mean, again, it's the optics of it all are not good for the NHL. It's obviously blown up on Twitter. It's blown up on social media that multiple teams got shafted in this regard because the Senators and the Wings both got screwed, basically. I know the Senators got the number 3 overall pick, whatever, and number 5, I think. So I guess you can't really say they got shafted, but the Wings in particular did get shafted in this situation by falling all the way back from 4, even though they were by far the worst team in the league. It wasn't close. There was nobody catching them. And the fact that we'll call it a playoff team, has a chance to get that number 1 overall pick, that just doesn't make sense to me. That's not what the draft lottery is for. It's not to give playoff teams a chance to become even better. It's to help the teams that are at the bottom of your league rebuild something and make them compete for the playoffs and potentially a cup. And I'll be honest with you right now, I don't understand the league's. The only thing I can think of is why the league would want to do this is for the TV ratings of that second round draft lottery, that to find out who that number one
They
pick
realize
is.
they have a generational talent, and
Right.
having lottery
And
specifically for that pick will
Right. And that's
milking it.
for TV ratings, and it makes them more money when they've lost a ton of money this year. Now, maybe the NHL and Gary Bettman doesn't see this. I know he's very much intertwined with the Canadian teams, and when you're intertwined with the Canadian teams, you're very much against the Detroit Red Wings. We have a long storied rivalry with most of them. When the Red Wings are a good organization and when they are winning, the NHL is better. The Detroit Red Wings are an original six team. They are one of the bigger and better fan bases in all of the National Hockey League. They have some of the best and storied rivalries between the Blackhawks, the Predators. That one's not as storied, but I mean, you can even argue the Canadians, the Maple Leafs in particular. They have a lot of long storied rivalries with a lot of these teams in this league. That the Avs is another one. I can't forget that one, but obviously we don't play in their conference anymore. But when the Wings are good, the NHL is a better league because of the way that fan base travels, the way that Hockey Town just comes to life. It is a better league when a team like the Detroit Red Wings is good. And you can't make that argument about every team in the league. When the Nashville Predators are good, how much impact does it have on the league? Not all that much. Let's be real. But when the Blackhawks are good, the Canadians are good.
A lot of people were rallied behind them when they were making that play.
I know. But when the Blackhawks are good, or the Canadians are good, or the Maple Leafs are good, or the Wings or the Red Wings are good, or the Rangers are good, it's good for hockey because it gets people to pay attention. It's organizations that people know. People don't say, "Who the hell are they?" People say, "Oh, I've seen them before. I want to watch them. They're awesome now." So when a Red Wings team is bad, it's not good for the league. So for the league to essentially shaft the Red Wings here and not allow them to have a generational type talent, I'm not saying Alexis Lafreniere that definitely should have gone to the Wings. Would have been great. But in all reality, being a Wings fan for a long time, I know that's it was never going to happen for us. But the opportunity to get either Stützle or Quentin Byfield would have at least been something for us that would have helped a lot and given us another piece to the puzzle to continue on with this rebuild. Not saying the guy we get isn't going to be that guy, but
you're going to have to do significantly deeper scouting.
Right. You'll have to just be a lot. You'll have to get a little bit luckier. We'll say that. So
just so I understand, the NHL lottery. So 4 is as far back as the Wings could have fallen, right? Could they have fallen, like, it's a lottery for the top 3 picks, and then after 4, it's just inverse order, it's just order standings, basically, like in reverse order?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm pretty sure they changed it up a ton this year, so I don't know for sure how it works. Hang on, let me read through this. But as far as I know, 4 probably was the furthest back the Wings could fall. I don't know for sure.
I just find it crazy, because that's what I was thinking about. I find it crazy that a team as bad as the Wings were this year fell as far back as they possibly could this year in the draft lottery. So my head is still stuck on the idea. Like, they didn't even try to make it subtle. Like, they like immediately, like, yep, we're gonna have a second lottery for the number 1 overall.
Well, okay, so
and my head is still, I can't wrap my head around that. Like, that screams predetermined to me.
It does scream predetermined, and I actually think the phase 2 was pre-planned if necessary. So obviously it's necessary, which makes it even worse in my opinion that we probably have confirmation that we probably know that it was pre-planned to have this phase 2 of lottery if necessary.
Here's my other question: is why were there teams competing for the playoffs in the lottery?
Because technically speaking, I believe they have up to 16 teams in the lottery, but the teams at the bottom have more of a minuscule chance. Or 15 teams in the lottery, not 16, sorry. So to fill in those extra 8 spots, they have to have teams that are competing because only 7 teams didn't make the playoffs as far as I know. Or the round-robin play-in format that technically isn't the playoffs. It doesn't count it as a playoff berth until you reach a certain point.
So it's kind of what the NBA is doing.
Yes, the NBA used a similar model to what the NHL came out with.
However, the NBA is not holding a lottery till August.
Right. So again, I don't see why this helps the NHL, and it helps. Gary Bettman.
The only way it helps the NHL is His ratings.
For ratings, for their second show, for the draft lottery, and for the
How much money can
play-in
we make
games
off
that
this
people
second
will
lottery?
watch, right?
Yeah.
And the play-in games as well. People are going to be watching those a lot more closely.
Well, let's talk about the playing games here for a second. Well, I was about to say, like, our team's gonna now like maybe not compete as hard because they want a better chance at that pick, knowing that they could be one of the teams. But
Now, I don't know
like,
exactly
if you're a team that's on the bubble, like, I don't know, I'd probably like, all right, even if we make the playoffs, we're probably not going to go far. But then again, I go back to National Predators. No one expected them to go far, and they went to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I don't know exactly how it's going to work out. Like, I don't think there's like a predetermined position that's going to get that. I think there's another lottery. It's just one of the 8 teams that potentially could get there.
But by not making the actual playoffs, you're giving yourself a shot at a generational
yes,
talent.
probably. Now, who knows how that's going to work out? I don't know if a team, quote unquote, is going to tank to get that position, but either way, it's not a good look for the NHL. It doesn't make sense to have to hold down a Detroit Red Wings organization. Obviously, Gary Bettman probably doesn't like the Wings. Either way, though, it just doesn't make sense for the NHL. It's not good optics in any way, and it just doesn't look good for a potential playoff team to have a shot at the number 1 overall pick. It doesn't. Yeah. It should belong to one of the 3 worst teams in the league. That's just how it should be. It doesn't make sense to reward a team the number 1 overall pick when, oh, by the way, you're still actually kind of a good team. So I'm going to give you an idea of how bad the Red Wings were. The team with the second best odds had a 43.7% win percentage, points percentage, I should say. So they got points in almost 44% of their games, and it was the Ottawa Senators. The Wings.
Is it based on points percentage, or is it based on
yes, it's
rankings?
Based on points percentage because that's how the rankings are determined in hockey. So a win is 3 points or 2 points. I can't. Jesus Christ, I slip in my mind. But an overtime loss is 1 point. Just making it to overtime is 1 point. So an overtime loss is 1 point. I think a win is 2 points.
So what was the wins?
2 points. Sorry, the Wings.
Yeah, you said wins 2 points.
Yeah, Wings points percentage. Now again, second worst was 43.437. Wings 0.275. That's how bad the Red Wings were this year. So I think they could have used a little bit of help in the lottery, but no.
Wow.
Yeah. The Wings did not have a good season. Now, there's been rumors thrown around that Stevie Y was in it for the tank and told Blashill, we're here for the tank. And not saying the players tanked, but the team.
We were genuinely a terrible team.
And also, I don't think
you can suddenly tank by not improving your team and actually not trying to tank your lineups and make it better.
I will say I don't think the Red Wings roster is that bad. The injuries played a massive role in how the season panned out for the Wings. I don't think they wanted to be this bad. Obviously, we lost Mantha for a while. We lost Zadina for a while. You had a lot of core players end up getting hurt. Jimmy Howard had battles throughout the season with injuries, but also was battling with it himself and had
which is
one of the worst seasons in hockey history.
Which is another way to suddenly tank is hold out your injured players longer than you need to. That's another way to subtly tank.
It is. But either way, this doesn't look good for hockey, and it certainly doesn't help the Red Wings rebuild. But like Stevie Y said, he's just got to do more homework, and he's not a bit surprised. And now we just got to get a little bit luckier. I mean, let's all remember Stevie Y was the number 4 overall pick in his draft. I believe it was 83. So it has been done.
I have a final question for you before we sign off here. Well, to preface, how often do draft day trades happen in the NHL?
I don't think they happen all that often. I could be wrong on that. I don't watch the NHL draft as closely as I do the NFL draft. Not many people do. I mean, a lot of people do. A lot of people do.
Second, to preface the second prefacing question, because I actually don't know the answer to this. Are lottery rights, like, let's say those teams competing in the playoffs right now, or competing for a playoff spot, if they were to trade their draft pick, that their spot in the lottery would go to the team they traded for, the team they traded with, right?
Considering we're past the trade deadline, I don't think that's possible.
Oh well,
I don't think that's potential.
Because I was about to ask you, what would Steve have to give up to get back into that lottery? That's what I was going to ask you.
To get a number 1 overall pick when you have Alexis Lafreniere, I don't think there's a team willing to give that up.
That's what I'm saying.
Hypothetically speaking,
that's why I said that if you can get back into the lottery, not you're trading exactly for the number 1 overall pick, but you're putting yourself back in the running, kind of thing.
Right. I don't think you can't really trade back into the lottery at this point because of the trade deadline. But technically, hypothetically speaking,
trade deadline.
If we were to have a draft day trade to go get that number 1 overall pick, I don't think it'd be possible. Yeah, not when you have a generational talent like an Alexis Lafreniere in there. I don't see it being possible.
That'd be a king's ransom.
Yes. So, but anyways, though, that is going to close it out for today, guys. We thank you for listening once again. Andrew, do you have anything else to add?
No, that's everything I got.
That's everything. All right. Thank you guys again for listening, and thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast for running things as usual. Running things as great as usual. But we'll catch you guys next week. Follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report if you want to yell at us about Andrew's lack of knowledge of hockey and me screwing things up with hockey as well. I promise I am a big hockey fan. I promise. I'm just tired. But either way, guys, thank you again for listening. At Real Fan Report is where you can find us on Twitter. But we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you again. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
For fans.
Have a good one, guys. Enjoy your week. Peace out.
Peace.